Okay, so this is a Sicha of the Rebbe from Chelek Chav Gimel, Likutei Sichos on Parshat Shlach. Of course, like the Rebbe always does, is that he takes the ideas that we think we know, and he takes everything the way we are normally looking at it, and he turns it around. Of course, everybody knows what Chassidus always talks about, that the Meraglim were really on a very high level and so on. But here the Rebbe brings it down in some practical things concerning also Moshe Rabbeinu's decision. What was Moshe Rabbeinu thinking? And this also sheds light on what the Meraglim were supposed to do as opposed to what they did L'poyel. Al pasuk Shlach lecha anoshim im Chazal, Shlach lecha l'daitcha. That's why it says the word lecha. It should have said shlach. Why does it say shlach lecha? Lecha, the Chazal say l'daitcha. Shlichas hameraglim tluya b'daitcha shel Moshe. Ach ani eini metzava oischa. So the point is that we usually look at it that Moshe Rabbeinu did something like off and out of the norm, and that's why things didn't turn out the way they were supposed to turn out. Hashem knew what was going to happen, or Hashem didn't really want it to happen, but he wasn't going to stop Moshe Rabbeinu. And because of that, he says, you want, send, but you're not going to like the outcome. That's the normal way how we look at it. The way the Rebbe is going to explain is not that way. If Moshe Rabbeinu, who was an Eved of Hashem, is doing something, he's doing that totally with Hashem's Ratzon, and he knows what Hashem's Ratzon is. Moshe Rabbeinu hareyoya avda namen shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mekach muvan shadaita shel Moshe l'shloach Meraglim haisem shum kach haisa daita shel Adonai HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was his whole metzius. Eved Naman. He couldn't be doing anything that would be going counter to Hashem's Ratzon, like people learn that that's what it means. Shlach l'chol daitcha. It says openly in the Torah that was al pi Hashem. So how can you say, nah, Hashem didn't get involved, it's Moshe Rabbeinu's thing. B'rishus HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Loimar shlichus Meraglim k'shal ha'atzma is a tova retzuya. Uk'fi shemavayra Ramban. Why was it a good thing? Why did it make sense to send the Meraglim? Sha'derech ha'regila lichbash medina hi b'emtzah shlichus Meraglim tchila k'dei limtzes ha'derech ha'tova v'akala b'eitzah lichbash b'sa'aretz. The Yidden were not flying into Eretz Yisroel al Pines. The Yidden were not going to get the land in Eretz Yisroel in a way of a nest where all the goyim would just run away. It was going to be with a normal way that you conquer. A normal way that you conquer is you need to have intelligence. You need to have spies. You need to go and send people to know which way to go even. Taka, it could have been that Hashem, if they wouldn't have done the Meraglim, maybe it would have been a nest the way they went in. But until that took place, we don't know that it's going to be a nest. And since we don't know it's going to be a nest, so you got to do it. B'derech hatava. So there was nothing wrong to send Meraglim into Eretz Yisroel. And therefore, if there's nothing wrong with it, so why do we say this is Moshe Rabbeinu's idea of ein move madua tolo zes kodesh baruch hu b'daita shel Moshe like tziva kach muchatchila. So they should have told him, just like Hashem tells him, you should go into Eretz Yisroel. Same thing you should tell him before you go into Eretz Yisroel. Send Meraglim. Ken yesh lahavin l'gava Meraglim oimer Rashi oise shok sheirim hoisen. That's why he calls anoshim. Anoshim means that they were tzaddikim, they were kosher. It's even logical to say they're kosher. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that sent them. He's not going to go ahead and pick people that are not roy for it. Moshe Rabbeinu is not going to pick people, let's say, even if everybody is a kosher, even if everybody were tzaddikim. Still in all, there are some people that are more qualified to do certain types of jobs, and certain people are not qualified to do the job. So if Moshe Rabbeinu picked these people, these were the 12 most qualified people in the whole Klal Yisroel to be Meragel Eretz Yisroel. The case you're talking to Shaloi zebavad shaloi bitzu karoyes shlichusam elhem garmai dekach lam Yisrael b'chiyah l'doides. How could it be such a total extreme mina kotza la kotza that these were the perfect candidates for the job, and even though they were the perfect candidates for the job, at the very same time they messed up so badly that they caused from now on Tisha B'Av, there's the date of when the Meraglim came back with the Besura Ra that they don't want to go into Eretz Yisroel. It became a Bechila Doiris. Today, Lahavin Zoyis, Yesh Lahaz Betchila Sa'inyan, Sha'ashlichus, Ba'efen Klali, Murkeves Mishnei Dvarim. What Moshe Rabbeinu needed from the Meraglim was two types of things he needed them to investigate. Aleph, Lesefes HaNesunim Achshuvim L'Kibush HaAretz, or Isa, Ma'achazak, Hama'at HaBemachnim. We need to have information that's necessary for any type of army that needs to conquer. There are certain types of information that you need. In addition to that information, there's also another part of the information gathering. And this was unique because usually that part of information gathering does not take place by any war, but it took place specifically here by Eretz Yisroel. Beis, Lesefes HaNesunim ala Oretz Atzma, HaToivehi, Hashmeinahi. This is not a usual type of intelligence gathering type of thing. This was unique that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted that the Meraglim should come back and tell the Yidden, give a look what type of wonderful land we're giving you. Which is, again, it's something out of the ordinary what regular spies do, but still, this is what was part of their mission. The chelik zeh shal shlichus haychashuv kol kach ad asher Moshe amar lehem v'yischazaktem v'lekachtem mepri haaretz. In the original Sikha, in the Yiddish, it's v'yischazaktem is italicized, it's emphasized. Why did they have to be v'yischazaktem? What was the big chayzik, the big gvura that they needed? Lamroi shebelicham mepri haaretz he mistaknem ki yuchol lahavchin b'yosem Meraglim. That's how important it was for Moshe Rabbeinu to gather also not just information that's necessary for the war, but also information about the characteristics of Eretz Yisroel, how good Eretz Yisroel is, that Moshe Rabbeinu was telling them. Again, we're talking here b'derech hateva. B'derech hateva, it's a dangerous thing to go ahead and do things that will give away that you're a spy. Still in all, Moshe Rabbeinu told them, because this was an important part of the shlichus. Not just to know how to enter Eretz Yisroel, how to do the Milchama, but also to show the Yidden how wonderful it is. The Ein Zabar, he's going to explain B'chlal, why did Moshe Rabbeinu need this? It's true that as much as they heard about how great Eretz Yisroel is, seeing actually the payers of Eretz Yisroel is something much better than just hearing about it. Shakadosh Baruch Hu kvar sipel ob Bnei Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael hi Eretz Toiva Rechava Eretz Avos Chol V'Dvash. And we know already a klal v'Arei Yisrael im aminim b'nei aminim, to such a degree that Moshe Rabbeinu got over the head when he was telling Hashem what happens if they don't believe me when I go and I tell them that I was sent. Yidden aminim b'nei aminim. So Hashem told them that it's Eretz Zavos Chol V'Dvash, it's Eretz Toiva Rechava. That should be enough for them. They don't. It's not even something miraculous. When Moshe Rabbeinu comes and says, Hashem told me to tell you that I'm taking you out of Mitzrayim. So they're looking like a Meshuggah. How are you going to take us out of Mitzrayim? We're under servitude. We're here for 210 years. How are you going to take us out? But this idea that Eretz Yisroel was a good land, Eretz Yisroel was not on a mountain somewhere in Tibet or something. People knew what was going on in the other countries. In Mitzrayim, they surely knew what was going on in Eretz Yisroel. It says even, there's a Rashi that brings down that everybody had a summer home or a vacation home. They had the Malachim had in Eretz Yisroel. So for sure they knew about how good Eretz Yisroel was. They didn't need to have that Moshe Rabbeinu should tell the Meraglim, go ahead, v'yischazaktem l'chachma pri haaretz. Still and all, even though there was all of that, ach b'kol zois ein doim hadavar l'riyas peres haaretz asher hoysa geremes liYisrael l'simcha raba ma'od La Sham B'Simcha. It's a lashon of the Ramban. The Ramban says that this would cause them, if they would actually see the paydas that the Meraglim brought, so that would bring them to do it b'simcha, not just b'kabbalah soil. To such a degree is it necessary? True, it makes it gishmak, it makes it with more simcha. But, and if they don't see the paydas, everybody knows what Eretz Yisroel is like. Echad min azbeirim lakachu amnam. Habasis lakim ha'toyra wa'agdamas nais l'nishma. The Rebbe is going to explain over here a very basic thing. It's very interesting. We're still in the Rebbe, the whole Sivan is always talking about the Hemshech of Shavuos. Shavuos goes through an entire month of Sivan. It can be a few weeks after Matan Torah, after Shavuos. We're still going through Chodesh HaShlishi, it's still Matan Torah. Matan Torah was the idea of Nasa Koydel Nishma. So even though the basic relationship that a Yid has to have with a command of Hashem is, first we will do Kabbalah soil, without understanding, without knowing. But then it has to be the nishma. Achlam roisois ein dai benais lavad, el echreichi la'acher nasa gam v'nishma, meloshen havana, k'moy daber k'shemel avdecha. In other words, the Rebbe is saying like this. The Yidden, they weren't just saying nasa. Anything that the Eibusha tells us, nasa. That's not enough. The nasa has to be agdama to the nishma. So from the nasa, we have to go to nishma and understand as much as we can understand. It's a very famous thing. The Rebbe always brings down that the Rambam will say that even though something is agzeres hakosov, there's no time given for it, but we need to try as much as possible to find an explanation that we can understand from it. So even though we have to do mitzvahs, the Kabbalah soil, nasa, but it's koydem l'nishma. It has to lead from the nasa, has to come to a level of nishma. The kach gam b'kesher l'knis Eretz Yisroel, ochin HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar Yisrael she Eretz Toiva Rechavu Chedoyim, ach Hashem roitze she Yisrael yivachechu betuva shel Eretz Yisroel, gam b'sichlam shalahem. That is the idea of nishma. Nishma, we just now said this from the word daber kishem be'avdecha. It has to be something that they, with their own seichel, appreciate. Ulefichach hayre Moshe Rabbeinu lahavi mepriya aretz. Kedei sheretzainam shel Yisrael likonos l'Eretz Yisrael. Lo yehei rak mishum kach tziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'aleim l'tzayis l'tzivei Hashem. Nasa, because that's what they already knew that is supposed to be having a nasa, whatever Hashem tells them to do. Elagam mipnei retzainam ha'atzmi mipnei she'en mevinim sheyesh lirtzais likonos l'Eretz Yisrael. Mishum she'eretz toiva rechavu be'emes, they have to understand that there has to be the nishma of it as well. Not only is it in the second part that Moshe Rabbeinu told them to bring v'schazaktim v'lchachtim v'priya oretz, so there should be the nishma by the Yidden, they should appreciate in their own seichel how good Eretz Yisroel is, but also the first part, why they need to know how to go. If Hashem told them that they're going to go into Eretz Yisroel, for sure He's not going to send them into a situation that they can't deal with. You don't have to know how to go. You'll go, and they will already help you out to be able to conquer the Lamed Aleph Malachim over there. So we say no. The Nas is not enough. We need to know in our own understanding. Limtzei ha'oifim l'kibash Eretz Yisroel, she'akavona b'kach hoisa she'Yisroel yivachechu LDaas b'sichlam she'yachol nuchalo. The Yidden themselves need to realize that yachol nuchalo. In other words, this is the whole discussion between the Meraglim and Kalev. Kalev said that if Hashem told us, we're going to be able to do it. That was the point of the first part of the Shlichus of the Meraglim, that they should be able to see the ways to go, because then they'll be able to say, I know we can go this way and that way, and we can avoid that place and this place, and that's how we can conquer it. It's not that Hashem wanted to shift the blame. If something goes wrong, now it's going to be on Moshe Rabbeinu's head. No, it's part of the nishma. It's part of the Yidden doing it by their own mind. It shouldn't be as a result of Hashem's tzivui. Kivin shematar shlichus hameraglim hilo oir b'Yisrael hanishma legabe knisos la'aretz lefichach gam hashlicha atzma hi ba'ofen shel ledaitcha she'oisim zois mishum shekach miskabel lefi avona v'loy rak ba'ofen shel nase k'hanim etzavelach. In other words, like we said before, it's a logical thing, like the Ramban said. Before you go to conquer a country, you have to go ahead and figure out and get information from the intelligence to be able to know which way is the best way to go. That's why the Eibusha told Moshe Rabbeinu, Shlach chol hadaitcha ein mitzavo ischa, because he wanted it to be totally b'derech hateva, the way people understand how you're supposed to conquer Eretz Yisroel. Kach yuvan gam ketzad yuchla meraglim asher oiseh shok sherim hayu. This goes back to the other question: how did it change min hakotza lakotza? If it was okay, if it was a normal thing to do, if it was the correct thing to do, so how did they all of a sudden go off so far? Shlichus hoysol l'tzoydach nishmam liyashiv zakniso lort lefi haseichel v'agoyin. As soon as you left it to the human mind, so the human mind could already start mixing things up. They didn't lie. וגם מסקנוסם לא ינוחו לעלוס מסקבלוס על הדס, שבדרך הטבע הם אינם יכולים לכבוש את הארץ. It's also a logical thing. יוצא איפה שהמרגלים קיימו לדעת מצא שליחס שלשמו נשלחו. They were told to find out, and they found out the information. אך תאוסם הייס בכך שהוסיפו את המסקנה לא ינוחו לעלוס. And this is brought down in the Forshman General. They weren't asked for commentary. I think we've spoken about this with intelligence agents. Intelligence agents are supposed to bring the information. They're not supposed to evaluate and say, okay, what are the actions supposed to be done? That, there are special people in the office, in the Mossad, in the Modi'in, that they have to go ahead and have all different types of information from different sources, and they decide. The Meraglim were supposed to bring in the information, no more than that. Moshe Rabbeinu klal lo yishalom l'chatchila it's supposed to be, it's a mistake, right? Im yichoylum on an aleph. Im yichoylum lichbash es haaretz im lav. Hu sholcha merak kedei la'atzer keitzad ka'al yosel l'chavshu. That's all he wanted to know. What's the ways? Which cities have fortresses, which are not, and so on. V'adrab, me'etzem uvda shemoshe Rabbeinu sholcha l'masar sa'aretz. V'limtzoi keitzad lichbash es Eretz Yisroel. If Moshe Rabbeinu would not have sent Meraglim, meaning he would not look for normal, natural ways to conquer Eretz Yisrael, so then you could say that Moshe Rabbeinu thought, or believed, or that was the way it was supposed to be, that the Yidden were going to enter Eretz Yisrael in a miraculous way. Who knows? Maybe there would be a whole bunch of Makkis that would attack the Eretz Yisrael, just like it attacked the Mitzrayim and gotten rid of all the Canaanim over there. The very fact that Moshe Rabbeinu sent Meraglim shows that, first of all, it was going to be in a natural way, and the very fact that we already promised to go into Eretz Yisrael means that the conquest will also be in a natural way that Yachol Nuchala. The Rebbe says in Ha'ara 27 that Kalev told them, when Kalev told them Yachol Nuchala, he said, even if you guys think that we can't do it, but Derech HaTeva, so anyway Yachol Nuchala, because the Eibusha can do Nisim. But that Moshe Rabbeinu sent him Derech HaTeva as a raya that we believe that it can be done by Derech HaTeva also. Ki'ilu HaKnisa la'aretz hi ba'ofen nisi la'haya klal makim l'shlichas hameraglim. Why then send the Meraglim at all? Yotzeh shedivreihem loy nuchal la'alois einam rak toisvis l'shechusam elo yoser mekach zeu ha'hepech mishlichusam. It's the total opposite of their shlichus. The very fact that that they're saying such a thing that they can't enter Eretz Yisrael, that itself is the total opposite. So this now explains What took place over there? The question is, so how was it going to be a situation to avoid that? And the hira for us has to be how we can avoid falling into the same trap that the Meraglim fell into. So he says, Toirei melashon hira. Mikach muvan shebetoirei nimtzas ha'adrocha keitzad lihimona mita'usam shal ha'meraglim. Maya derech lakach shem ha'parshal fin min Yisroel hu shlach melashon shlichus. Which means it could have been called, I don't know, Meraglim, it could have been called something else that speaks about the story. But it says Shlach. Why does it say Shlach? Shlach shows on a specific inyan over here that is something very unusual that had to take place. There had to be a musig of Shlichus. Think about it. There's different terms that the Torah could have used instead of Shlach. Just stam, whatever. I want people to go. Teilchu. That he told the Meraglim, Teilchu to Eretz Yisroel. The fact that the term that's used is Shlach, and the parsha is called Shlach, that shows that Shlichus is a very ikaristic inyan over here. Yehudi tzarech LDaas shegam biyoyis shakua ba'avoida mesug shel nishma, which is havana sichlis ledaitcha. All of Tamid Liskar Shu Shliach of Moshe Einu Mevatzeas Maisav Mishum Shekach Muvan Loi Elam Mishum Shezeu Ratzana Elyon Vekach Nishmarim Gam Benasa Vegam Benishma Histak Lazu Mafticha Shamachshava Tia Machshava Amitis Viagiu Lamaskana Amitis. Why, if Nishma is so important, do you need to have the Nasa Koidum Nishma? Because the Nasa before the Nishma ensures that the Nishma is going to be the way it's supposed to be. The same thing, if someone is connected to Moshe, it's a Shlichus of Moshe, that ensures that even when they're doing it with their own Seichel, their Seichel is not going to mislead them. Seichel is objective. Tzarech levatlas kol anatias ha'atzmius v'chadoyma u'li'israkis b'ismasrus al hadavar sha'oisei reitzim lahavin. General, if you want to be able to understand something, you need to remove anything that's going to interfere with my objectivity. I can't be a negeh b'davar. Kasher mishu oisik b'sichlei b'inyan kolshu mishum tainugay ha'ishi v'chadoyma Hari oz muvan sheya'arv b'kachas netiyosa v'ishiyas v'chadoyma. Ada sheyanasa lahasim as a metzias l'daita. He's going to try to make the facts or the svara fit what his enjoyment is and interest is, what his particular negia b'davar is. V'zel echad ha'azberim l'na shoicha ada sha'atera meres so it's a very interesting point that the Rebbe says. They're not false chachamim. It's not chachamim b'einei atzmam. How can shoichad even be a consideration by people that the Torah calls chachamim? They call tzadikim. Ella inyan ha-shoichad einana rak lekichas kesef v'chadoyme v'amir sheker goli b'ikvis kach. That's not the only thing that the Torah is talking about. Ella gam ha-machshava ala metzias sheloi kefi shehi. As soon as you're thinking about the concept without being focused on getting to the truth of the matter. He's focused on himself. And now I want to see how this fits in to my life. That is the idea of shoichad. Shoichad does not mean that you're taking money. Shoichad means there is me and I'm trying to fit in the seichel according to the way I feel and want and desire. It's not completely objective. Obviously, the ultimate example of that is when a person takes money to be able to render a decision. But the point is, Shoichad means my Metzias is mixed in. V'zu haysa sibba l'tousam l'chshloimim shal Meraglim. Chasura b'hem hayizbatlos klapim Moshe Rabbeinu ba'ofen shehiturgesh gam b'yoisam shkuyim b'inyan shal v'nishma loser sa'aretz. Even when they're doing nishma, even when they're doing it with their own mind, in part of that understanding with their own mind has to be with an awareness that I'm over here trying to fulfill what Moshe Rabbeinu wanted from me. Umishum shechoshu as mitziusam ha'atzmis hipila aleim re'iyas ha'nefilim b'nei anok pachad ad kedei kach v'anihi b'eineinu chagovim. The Rebbe always used to speak about this by Fabrengens, about the big problem that when it's not what they're looking at us, it's not how the Goyim are looking at us, it's not how the Knaanim look at the Meraglim. V'anihi be'eineinu kechagovim. In our own eyes, we looked as chagovim, we looked like we're grasshoppers. In other words, it was in our own mind. The whole problem started from our own mind. And where does that problem in our mind start from? When we become independent and we start thinking for ourselves without realizing that we have to be connected to Emes. V'zel me'ein shoichat shehitas machshavtam ad kedei kach she'amru le'nuchal lalis. Kashe Yehudi zoicher shehu shliach. Shlach sheshluch shalom k'moisai. Like it's brought down in Nigla many different levels. The Rebbe speaks about different levels of Shliach Shalom K'moisai, so that means he's like the Meshaleach, he's like Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore he's on point. He knows exactly what's necessary. Harei l'shliach ein metzias atzmis, ala kol metziusa hi ha-metzias shal Meshaleach. B'yachad im zois, not just any Meshaleach, medubar kan b'shluchah shal Moshe. So since Moshe Rabbeinu was known to be Midas HaEmes, Oz Nisharim Kshurim LeMoshe Rabbeinu LeMidas HaEmes Vein Sorim Emena, we don't lose any sleep over the fact that we may think that we're Kachagovim. Kol Azman Zoichrim Shohelchim B'Shlichus Shal Moshe Rabbeinu. Ve'ein Choyshim Al Metzias HaAtzmis, we're not occupied with our own self. Va'oz ein nas mishuchadim u'b'meila mevatzim b'shleimus as a shlichus loser sa'aretz hadereshes havona amitis va'oimrim ha'toiva ha'aretz asher Hashem Elokeinu noisen lanu, the way Kalev said. V'idei kach magim l'kibush ha'aretz l'gvuleisah ad l'kiyum ha'yid yachva Hashem Elokechas givulcha, that will be even greater than what was promised to Avraham Avinu, or greater than was promised with the limitations of the Eretz. LDaas Moshe Tzidkeinu Meir Meinu Mamash.